But there's no doubt about it, is there? Arnold Neveling putting the pressure on. He's the first driver into the 56ers. 56.919 is the fastest lap. It's been set by Arnold Neveling, and it's been set by him coming through traffic. There's confirmation on our graphics. 56.919, and Arnold Neveling, kart number 625, continues the forward progress. Lovely passing manoeuvres to go through the field. Toms Bobrovskis came under the pressure there, but had to yield. Kart number 632, Peter Scafels, in the lead with a margin of 1.5 seconds. The guy in shot is Arnold Neveling. Why are we following him on camera? Well, at the moment we're following Peter Scafels. We're following him because he's the leader. Now we see Ben George go through. There is Peter Scafels coming onto the start-finish line once again. We've completed 10 laps, 10 of the 17 races. There's Ben George, and behind him, let's have a look at the distances in time. 1.4 seconds, Scafels to George. 1.5 seconds, Ben George to Arnold Neveling. Toms Bobrovskis relegated into 4th place. The only driver in the 56ers is Arnold Neveling, and he's been consistently in the 56ers throughout this racing. Well, it's a race that is not over by any means, because Arnold Neveling could go through to the victory, but Peter Scafels has a cushion. You feel that in the front of this race, the very amiable 22-year-old Belgian driver may well be able to turn up the heat if he needs to. Ben George in 2nd place, definitely finding some form at last. Not had a terribly good meeting throughout, but Arnold Neveling, who you see there, or I was going to say see in shot at the moment, it's Peter Scafels in shot. Peter Scafels coming round once again on the final bend of the circuit, and confirmation of the distances between them in time, or perhaps I should say the gap, the time gap. 1.468 seconds between Peter Scafels and Ben George. 1.2 seconds between Ben George and Arnold Neveling. We have completed 11 laps. There are 6 laps to go, or something like 5.5 laps now. 632, Peter Scafels is in shot. And coming into shot, 621 Ben George, and then Arnold Neveling. Now that looks like a non-race on our television screen because they're well spread about. Ooh, Arnold Neveling clattering the side there a little bit, and making that PCR frame clatter about a little bit. The PCR for the South African driver being given a little bit of hammer there. But the fascination now is the cat and mouse. Can Arnold Neveling, the teenager from Gauteng province in South Africa, can he haul in? First of all, Ben George from Tasmania, Australia. He's getting closer, isn't he? As you can see from our television screen, definitely getting closer. It looks as if Peter Scafels has increased his lead, but I think in reality, Arnold Neveling is getting closer to Ben George. Ben George, excellent driver, very committed to the cause. In the top of the screen, you saw the V on the back of his racing overalls. Kart number 623 just going through shot, I think that was. 632 is Peter Scafels. 621 there, Ben George. Moved from the opposite end of the earth, if you like. Ooh, there's a shot that tells the story, doesn't it? We stay with this one because Team V, oh, it's happened so easily when it happened. Well, Arnold Neveling, well, Arnold's gone a bit wide and Ben's fighting, but did you see the gesture on the television screen? Because my interpretation of that gesture is that with Arnold going a little bit wide and Ben George alongside him, it was neck and neck. Who's going to take the advantage? They could have touched, and Ben George, I thought, made the gesture saying, "You're quicker than me, go for it." And I rather think that Ben George, in a very sporting gesture there, had said to Arnold Neveling, look, we're not both going to tangle wheels, go for it. And, well, whether he did or he didn't, Arnold Neveling is now in 2nd place. Well, Arnold set a fastest lap now, 56.718, and there's Peter Scafels. Well, can you imagine the mindset? Peter Scafels thinks to himself, I'm in the front, I've not had any pressure throughout the race. Is there any pressure going to come my way? He looks over his right shoulder and he sees the yellow racing overalls of the driver that started on the back row of the grid, Arnold Neveling, who's in screenshot now. Well, Peter, your best time 57.037, Arnold's best time 56.718. Peter, you've got a 2-second margin, more than a 2-second margin. But our foreshortened coverage, and you see Ben George there looking over his shoulder. Am I safe in 3rd place? Well, Toms Bobrovskis is 2.5 seconds or 2 1/3 seconds behind Ben George in 4th place. But we've spent a lot of time watching Arnold Neveling, and quite right, because that's the storyboard of the race. The driver who started on the very last row of the grid has worked himself up into second place. Well, what would you say? Would you say that Arnold Neveling can get the victory, or is he now running out of laps? Because at the end of this lap it will be 15 laps completed. That would mean just 2 to go, and Arnold Neveling still has to catch Peter Scafels, never mind go past him. Jerry Hargitay up to 11th place. Yannick Oliveau, the tallest driver in Rotax Euro Challenge, in 10th place, if I'm reading that correctly. Yes, oh, maybe 12th place, maybe 12th. Well, I take a pause to look outside of the window and I see Peter Scafels, who's in screenshot now, going over the start-finish line. I'm estimating that that's something like about 12 kart lengths difference. 1.09 seconds is the difference between Peter Scafels and Arnold Neveling. If this was a 20-lap race, I would back Arnold Neveling to catch Peter Scafels. It is not a 20-lap race, it's a 17-lap race, and we're on lap 16. So time running out for the South African teenager. But Peter Scafels, well, he's yielding something like... Oh, and the fast lap by Arnold Neveling, 56.572. How fast is that? 56.572. Just about the fastest racing lap we've seen here at Karting Genk this weekend. Of course, I remind you that these are two... Oh, and Arnold got a little bit wrong there, didn't he? Went wide and two wheels going towards the rumble strip. Well, it's do or die. The last lap board comes out. The last lap is started. Peter Scafels. Peter Scafels goes round turn 1, which caused so much trouble at the start of some races earlier today. Arnold Neveling around turn 2. You would have to say that if Peter Scafels doesn't make any mistakes, and you saw that slightly lumpy bump there, Peter Scafels ought to just find the checkered flag just comes soon enough. But on the far straight, the race leader, Peter Scafels, now going through the chicane, coming back down towards the Restaurant Terrace complex. Well, at the moment moving away back towards the N75 freeway. Coming down now to the fourth last bend. Arnold Neveling is going to push him so close, but I doubt that he can do it. 2 laps to go, sorry, 2 bends to go, 2 bends to go. Peter Scafels negotiates paddock bend. Peter Scafels sees the checkered flag raised, and Peter Scafels raises his hand, punches the air and says, I've won, and indeed he has. But oh, the praise we have to give for the second place driver, Arnold Neveling, from all the way at the back, and a good solid drive by Ben George, getting onto the podium in 3rd place. But let's give the credit to the driver who didn't make the mistake in the pre-final, didn't make the mistake in the final. That's Peter Scafels. Peter Scafels started on the 2nd row of the grid, so it wasn't a flag-to-flag finish or a lights-to-flag. Peter Scafels from Belgium. He's the driver who is deservedly taking the checkered flag, whilst Arnold Neveling deservedly takes a lot of credit. Peter Scafels, born in a town called Achel, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce that correctly, here in Belgium. Drives for the Art of Racing team. The Art of Racing, a combi kart driver, as we've said previously, a factory driver for combi kart. He's happy, isn't he? He's happy. He's not just taking this as just another race win. He's pretty happy. Peter Scafels, also very fit, of course, doubling up